I'm Josh Kaczynski. I am chair of the STIF Advisory Committee, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with a roll call to see who's here. When I call your name, please just let me know whether you're here or not. Carmen? Kelly? Gino? I'm here. Pete?
Here.
Thank you. Scott?
Here.
Thank you. Bart?
Yep.
Thank you. Chelsea? Joshua Myatt? Chelsea, it looks like you just popped in online. Would you mind just unmuting and letting us know that you can talk and hear us? Okay, we'll come back. Cassette?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Carrie?
Here.
And Bill?
Here.
Okay, Chelsea? Okay, well, if at any point we get that figured out, please let us know. But why don't we continue moving forward with our agenda review. So we're going to have a public comment period tonight, followed by our introduction to Section 5310 funding. This board serves as an advisory body to the LTD board on the use of those Section 5310 funds, and we'll learn more about that from LTD staff. Following that, we'll hear proposals for the use of those funds from LTD and Circle of Friends, and then we'll have a discussion and ultimately be voting to make a recommendation to the board on the use of those funds. And then we'll get a little staff update about further committee activities for the rest of this year. So why don't we go ahead and start with the public comment period. Is there anyone here or signed up for public comment? Okay, moving right along. Why don't we begin with our first agenda item, introduction to Section 5310 funding, presented by John Allen.
All right, thanks everyone, members of the STIF Advisory Committee. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Section 5310 funds. These are funds specifically intended to benefit programs for older adults and people with disabilities. These are federal funds that pass to us through ODOT. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the process and just kind of what's before you today and just the overall use of these funds. So even for folks that have been serving in these roles for quite some time, you may notice that this is a bit of a different process, and that is the intent from ODOT and the state. The timeline has been separated from our STIF process. So where in previous biennium, and typically use of 5310 and STIF funds happens every 2 years. That's been seamlessly put together, and as staff, we've been able to kind of put that together as one linear program that has the same timeline. In this upcoming biennium, that's actually been separated. So we're coming before you first with recommendations on the use of Section 5310 funds, and then you will additionally and separately be looking at STIF formula funds in the future. Now, many of the programs that you're going to be reviewing actually use both. And one of the characteristics of federal funds is they typically come with a match requirement. And historically, the way that's typically been satisfied is that 5310 funds use STIF formula funds as the match. And there's a lot of technical kind of reasons why LTD has structured this the way that it is. And I can get into some of that detail if helpful for this group. For example, federal funds can't be matched against federal funds, so state funds happen to be kind of a more natural match towards use of federal funds. It gets a little bit more complicated this biennium with the timeline being separated the way it is. The simple part, and the way that I want to present this for this group here, is this really isn't the only bite at the apple for this group. So we're going to be coming back with STIF formula recommendations. The STIF formula program deals with a significantly larger pool of funds. It's going to be many of the same transportation programs. So as part of my presentation materials, I'm going to give you kind of a more complicated budget. You're actually only going to need to review a much smaller portion of it, but I provide you with additional detail just to give you some additional context. But all of these funds are interrelated, and the way that the programs use them is interrelated. So we can't use Section 5310 funds in a vacuum. They require matching funds, but the intention with it is that we're trying to do transportation programs in our community that benefit older adults and people with disabilities. That's the specific purpose of the Section 5310 funds themselves. So I'll be talking a little bit about the types of programs that have used those in our community. So I mentioned in our, if you don't mind advancing the slide, or does this clicker do the same? Thanks. We're anticipating a little bit more than $2 million available over the course of the upcoming biennium. So that's going to be for the upcoming next couple of years. The match rate for these funds is typically going to be about 10.27% based on the type of program and recipient. The allocation of these funds is guided by two main documents. The first is LTD's PMP, or 5310 Project Management Plan. The short version of that is that the PMP defers to our coordinated plan. So LTD also maintains a coordinated plan which is reviewed by stakeholders throughout our community, as well as LTD's board. Those contain three main priorities in choosing how funds get allocated, and I can go over that as well. But the last formal update of the coordinated plan took place in 2019. However, it's been reviewed by LTD's board and staff many times along the way. And so there hasn't been a need for a significant revision up until now. It is going through a formal update that'll go before the board. We haven't heard that there's been feedback to change the priorities and how funds get allocated as part of that process. So just noting, it's been very consistent throughout the years in how LTD has chosen to allocate 5310 funds. The part that's new this biennium is just the timeline for it, whereas normally a lot of the decisions about whether or not something is better suited to being, say, a 5310 program or a solely STIF formula funded program has been something that staff has been able to make work on behalf of this committee. And just because of the advanced and bifurcated timeline, we have to make some decisions earlier that will then inform the STIF formula process later. So we've got some timeline on the board on there. And then just noting, again, that this won't be the only time that these programs go before the board. If you don't mind advancing the slide. The coordinated plan then sets three priorities in how to best allocate or use or recommend these funds. And this group's role is to provide a recommendation on allocation that would go before the board for review and final approval. So the coordinated plan, which has been reviewed by this group and groups like this in the past, and is also part of the upcoming update for the 2026 revisions, establishes three priorities for allocation of funds. The top highest priority for use of 5310 funds is to keep doing what we're doing, to maintain current service levels. So kind of our core priority as set in our coordinated plan and what guides this group is to say, whenever possible, let's try and continue existing services, not make funding cuts. The second priority, or what the coordinated plan establishes, is once you've been able to kind of ensure that current services are able to maintain at current service levels, consider using any additional funds, if there are any left over, to expand existing services. So to take an existing program, maybe it can go in a new service area, maybe it can go more often, maybe it can do some new types of things or serve a greater population than it could before. The third priority, and what the coordinated plan sets as if there is still money left over after that portion of the process, is to consider new services, new programs that haven't existed before. So what the coordinated plan guides and recommends is to say, if you've been able to continue doing what you're doing and you're able to find areas where you've been able to grow programs in all the ways that you've needed to grow them, consider trying some new programs. So doing some things that you've never considered before, being able to either pilot new services or find new ways to serve older adults and people with disabilities that may not have been considered in previous iterations of the plan or from other programs that have previously been funded. Send the next slide if you don't mind. So to be able to do that, LTD opens a public solicitation process where we note to the public 5310 funds are expected to pass through LTD, and for any eligible programs which are able to provide those types of services, we want to hear about that so that this group can make informed decisions and recommendations on the allocation and use of these funds for the board's review. So as part of that, we held a technical workshop and invited any members of the public who are interested in being able to learn more about what Section 5310 funds are and the use of them. I'll note it was a little bit more challenging, in my opinion, for many members of the public to be able to participate in that type of process just due to the shortened timeline. So we knew that it would be a condensed timeline for the 5310 portion of the process, as well as just having that fully bifurcated. It necessitates prospective applicants to have to make some kind of estimated guesses on how the rest of funding allocations will go through the STIF formula process, which will happen in the future. So I'll note that regardless of any decisions that get made at the STIF Advisory Committee here today, likely they will be influential on decisions that will come up before this group in the future as part of the STIF formula process. Or in other words, for any programs that are reliant on 5310 funds, if for whatever reason decisions are made not to recommend in funding for those programs, they could come back before this group as a STIF formula request as well. So again, that's that second bite at the apple. These funds are both limited, both at the 5310 level and at the STIF formula level. So there can be points where there are going to be hard decisions to be made, whether that's here or at the STIF formula process in the future. It's limited funding. What I will note is the 5310 portion is much more limited. So we're looking at a couple of $1 million for the upcoming 2 years, whereas the STIF formula process will be a not infinite, but much larger amount with a much more relaxed timeline and fewer restrictions on the use of funds. So between all of the different funding sources that we're going to be talking about today, the 5310 portion is the most restrictive with the shortest timeline and the most difficult to be able to apply for. So we'll likely be seeing many more programs as part of the STIF formula process. Next slide, if you don't mind. This is a bit hard to read, but this is, I can tell you what this is intending to communicate. So these are the programs that are recommended by staff because they are part of historical 5310 allocations. So going back to that first priority of let's keep doing what we've been doing. And then so we've got in the kind of third numbered column, or one with dollar values, the 5310 or section 5310 column shows the exact recommendations per program. Now, last time I was here, not too long ago, I gave an overview of RideSource services, so I'm not going to duplicate that here today. I am here, though, to answer any questions, so I can give a really brief kind of one-sentence reminder what each of these programs is, and I really encourage feedback, questions, dialogue. I'd be happy to answer any questions about these programs or if you want to delve deeper or better understand what we're trying to accomplish. And I'll talk a little bit about the dollar values, and just you'll see that there's a lot of different revenue components that goes into funding each of these. So I'll talk a little bit more about how that works too. So yes.
I just wanted to note, if anyone's having trouble reading the slide, this table is also available on page 8 in your packet.
Great, thank you for that. So to start with, at the top, we've got RideSource ADA paratransit and shopper service. So this is mandatory service required by LTD to complement our fixed route bus service, particularly to serve folks who are unable to access the bus due to either age or disability. Common example would be, I'm not able to ambulate down to the nearest bus stop or wait there for enough time for a bus to be able to pick me up. We would then establish eligibility for a paratransit vehicle to come pick someone up, either direct from their home or their location to exactly where they need to go, to ensure there's equitable access for transportation for everyone in our community, even if someone's not able to access the bus. We have preventive maintenance for specialized services fleet. That's primarily, but not entirely, our ride source vehicle fleet. That also includes, we've got our connector vehicles in Cottage Grove. There's the Diamond Express, Rhodea Express, our rural shuttle vehicles. It winds up being, what is that, 70-some odd vehicles in total. So it's the estimated cost to be able to provide preventive maintenance or just the overall upkeep of these vehicles to keep them running and on the road. So not just oil changes. We have an engine breaks down and needs a replacement, or a transmission problem, new tires, whatever's needed to keep our vehicles safe and running. That's the estimated cost that we expect over the upcoming biennium. Volunteer mileage reimbursement is a program we've partnered with Senior and Disability Services through LCOG to be able to coordinate. That one actually is zeroed out in our upcoming budget. So in conversations with SNDS, they've noted they're able to fully take that on internally. So we're able to remove both expenditures and revenues from that for the upcoming future, but freeing up a little bit of room. Behavioral health transportation is a partnership that we have with Whitebird Clinic to be able to provide transportation typically to behavioral health appointments and trips for folks who may not otherwise be best suited to be on the bus due to the nature of a disability. Crucial Connections and Veterans Transportations are similar programs that are gap-based transportation to be able to assist someone when there is no other transportation option. So an example would be a critical medical appointment that isn't covered by, say, Medicaid, and someone doesn't have the resources or is in an area that isn't served, that is truly a life-changing one-time need for someone in critical need. So small, relatively small budget for very impactful programs for that. Travel training is to assist individuals who may need help being able to learn how to ride a bus or learn some kind of life skills or tools to be able to ride for someone that otherwise would be a paratransit rider to be able to develop independence for riding on the fixed route bus. And transit hosts are stationed at Eugene Station to be able to assist folks, typically with developmental disabilities, who may just need a bit of additional assistance transferring between one bus or another to be able to, again, develop that full independence in riding our system. And transportation eligibility assessments are a requirement for anyone who accesses our ride source system, where we do a typically in-home assessment to review someone's functional needs. Really what it's doing is someone able to use the bus? If not, they're typically going to be eligible for ride source. So they're just doing that kind of initial assessment, functional assessment of how someone's body works. We also have on there for reference some other programs that are typically related. Two of them use what are called Section 5311 funds, which are very specifically funds designated for rural areas or to be able to assist with transportation outside the metropolitan area. So that includes our Cottage Grove connector, the LTD connector in Cottage Grove, and the Rhodea Express in Florence. And we also have on there the Diamond Express, which uses a different kind of intercommunity fund under the STIF discretionary umbrella. So those are on there for context. And then just noting, we've got on there a bunch of acronyms and numbers, so I can help guide through that. STIF formula, STIF discretionary. You're reviewing the 5310 portion today, so that's really the important allocation number. We also include their estimated fare box revenues over the upcoming biennium and the overall budget numbers. So all that's provided in context to note, sometimes the amount that 5310 provides is small relative to the overall size of the transportation program themselves. So again, just noting that interrelated connectedness between all these different programs and various different funding sources. As we get into the STIF formula process, you'll see more programs that also are entirely STIF formula funded, a little bit of a simpler process, and again, with a larger pool of funds to be able to draw upon. 5310 kind of by necessity has some of these more complex relationships. So I'm just kind of visually displaying what those look like for purposes of this group, but no need to overcomplicate. Really, everything that's above that shaded blue line are 5310 recommended allocations by staff based on historical expenditures at LTD. So we're just noting these are the types of programs that we've been providing that we'd like to continue to using Section 5310 funds for your consideration. So with that, if you don't mind hitting the next slide, I'd like to invite any questions, comments, concerns from the group, be able to provide whether it's any technical expertise or anything to either better describe the programs themselves or the use of these funds or just the overall process.
Thanks for that presentation, John. Any questions from the committee? I see Scott and then Carrie.
Thanks, John. One comment, one question. Thank you, first of all, for protecting both the transit host program as well as the travel training program, really important to the disabled community. And I am just curious as to why the veterans funding was knocked in half.
That's a great question. The short version is looking at current expenditures, we in this last biennium included a little bit additional with the hopes that we might consider ways we could expand that program. And looking at our current expenditures, we haven't utilized it. So in short, we look for opportunities where we might be able to better serve veterans with transportation in our community. Currently, the need hasn't been there, so we're sizing our budget accordingly. So in a sense, we're just trying to be good stewards of funds wherever we can, that if we don't see that there's a direct need, we're going to right-size our budget to accommodate. So if we did find that there was a strong desire or need to be able to provide those types of trips, we would have maintained it. But in reviewing our budget over the last biennium, it just hasn't been there.
Thank you.
Carrie, go ahead.
Just so I'm tracking correctly, on the 5310 column, say for the behavioral health transportation, it's got 305,000 in 5310. And then under the STIF formula, it's got 35,000, and that's consistent for most of them. Is that using the STIF formula funds for the percent matching to utilize then the 5310?
Yep, great question. That's absolutely correct. So that's that 10.27% match rate. It's a requirement to be able to use 5310 funds. So I'll note there's no decision being requested by this group on the use of STIF formula funds at this meeting today, but there will be a request in the future. And at best, we can only estimate what the need is going to be. So expect that there would be a STIF formula recommendation. And I use this as a kind of a guiding tool just to show what the overall program cost is expected to be. Essentially, for every dollar less in 5310 would be another dollar more I would need to come back as a STIF formula request. So the overall program budget, if we were to maintain current service, the totals are as we would estimate, and this would be maximizing the amount of 5310 funds that we could contribute towards these programs, but they still would require extensive, as you can see, STIF formula and other contributions to be able to continue them. So this is just the 5310 portion of the conversation. That would be the minimum STIF formula portion to be able to continue to support these programs as well. But noting that doesn't lock in this group to any recommendations. No one's being asked to consider that. It's just purely provided as a reference point. The 5310 portion is the only portion under consideration for today.
John.
Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Related to that, I'm curious, if you could speak to, like, what are some of the alternatives for match, since we're not reviewing STIF tonight? What are some examples of other pots of money that could come from?
I don't have good answers for you on that. So I think that would be a question that would go before the board or would require additional staff review. So historically, this has been the model that LTD has used, that 5310 funds have been matched with STIF formula.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to check and see if Chelsea online has questions or comments I can't see. Okay, other questions from the room? Okay, I do have a couple of questions myself. Based on prior discussions with STIF formula funds, if those funds go unexpended, they return to the region in future years. Is the same true of 5310 funds? If for some reason we're not able to use them, do we lose them, or do they come back to the region?
That's a great question. So 5310 formula funds are a formula fund that gets allocated to our community. We have not ever been in a situation where we have been unable to spend 5310 funds. So that's remained kind of both a priority and in the way that LTD typically allocates funds. We've always made sure that the 5310 allocation is fully spent down by the end of the biennium, knowing there's a kind of a complex interrelation between these uses of funds. I think there is, even though it's a formula allocation, there is some risk in kind of the way that gets used if they go unspent, but never an issue in our community. We have always had more programs that have needed 5310 funds than 5310 funds that are available.
Okay, and then a question on the STIF formula on this chart you have here. This represents just the STIF formula funds associated with programs funded by 5310, but there's more STIF funds that we expect to be available.
Absolutely right. So not just more funds, but also more programs that will need STIF formula funds. So that's a very good point that I'm presenting just as a reference point for this group, the programs that are using both 5310 and their different match components. But though there will be additional STIF formula funds available that aren't reflected here, there will also be many more programs that don't use 5310 funds that are solely reliant on STIF formula funds that'll go before this committee in the future. So it will be a much longer list. The STIF plan is the authoritative document that shows the interrelation of all the different programs that use STIF formula funds. And so I would reference that as a good example of what that's going to look like in the future. But that'll happen after this 5310 process is already complete. So I'm only providing for reference just estimates on the costs of programs that happen to use 5310 funds at this point. But the STIF formula plan shows how we're doing that in the current biennium. So all that can be cross-referenced, and you can see the greater number of programs and funds. It'll be more complex in scale and scope. But the use of funds will actually be a bit simpler. There won't be the same kind of match requirement for some of the STIF formula programs that 5310 has, and it'll have a bit of a more generous timeline.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions from the committee for John? Not seeing any. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone.
Okay, our next agenda item is the Circle of Friends proposal for Section 5310 funding. We'd like to invite up Michael Aguilar. If you just press the thing.
Way more advanced than my office. Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Mike Aguilar, and I'm the Executive Director of Circle of Friends. We are a small school in Cottage Grove that serves youth with complex disabilities. 100% of our youth use wheelchairs, and highly complex wheelchairs, for mobility. In my time as executive director, and as I've had conversations with families and leaders in our organization, and as recent as just this first quarter, when we conducted a needs assessment of Lane County parents and families and service providers, educators, those who work with youth with disabilities of any kind, we found that one of the greatest barriers for kids among mental health services, et cetera, is transportation and geographic access to critical services. A real life example, and I mean this in not a critical way at all. We love our partners at LTD. But I was working on getting our students their very first bus pass because we're a life skills program. We're trying to teach these kids a level of independence. Not all of them will be able to live an independent life. This is the level of their disability. It's very complex. But many of them will. And so we want to teach them about accessing their world via LTD. And so I got them their bus passes, and I was really excited about it. And as I was trying to navigate getting the A on the back of it so that they would have an attendant, because many of our students require, no, not many, they all require one-on-one support. Some are cathed for the restroom, some need nursing support for G-tube or delegated care. And the individual on the other end of this communication said, well, just get them all up to me and we'll take care of them. Unfortunately, that's not possible. We don't have a way to get these kids, these incredible students, to that individual. Getting from 116 N Street to the Walmart with 9 kids and all in wheelchairs is impossible. And then when we get to the Walmart, the bus only comes a couple times to Cottage Grove, and there's only 2 tie-downs on the bus, and we don't know for certain if those 2 tie-downs will be available. And so it's really just a gamble. So what we're trying to propose, if you will consider, is investing in Circle of Friends and the youth that we serve to allow us the opportunity to reach more kids, because we know that there are kids who aren't coming to Circle of Friends because transportation is an issue. And as we are currently a K-8 program, in the upcoming school year, we're extending our services to be a K-12 program. And I referenced the Lane County Youth Disabilities Assessment. We're expanding our programming to include mental health services, so therapy for family and youth, and among other things. And so this tool or resource, this additional infrastructure, will allow us to reach more children and families with disabilities such that we can support the whole child, not just the child in their K-8 program. I think that, I know funding is limited, and I recognize that difficult decisions have to be made. And I shared in the packet, and I hope you all had the chance to see it, the faces of some of our kids. These are the kids that have, unfortunately, not had the opportunity to experience many of the enrichment opportunities that we've had, or we had growing up, like going to the museum or going to a fair, because there's just not a way to get them there. It's not that those opportunities exist. The gap is sincerely and truly that there's no way for them to get from point A to point B, and this proposal seeks to fill that gap with a very highly modified, kind of first of its kind, 10-seater bus that would hold 10 wheelchairs. So hopefully that explains who we are, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Bill?
Said the first of its kind. Can you elaborate on that for your organization? Not a custom vehicle, I assume.
It is a custom vehicle. Yeah, in talking with John and in speaking with the manufacturer, they've never built anything like this. They've not seen a bus with 10 wheelchair tie-downs in it. And so the very condensed time frame, like I was in communication with this manufacturer, like, I really need you to get me this information. And he's like, I'm really trying, but this is like a really unique bus. So they were back and forth with the manufacturer. So when I say first of its kind, that's truly what I mean. And I would also share that I imagine that there were other charities or 501c3s who serve this population that would qualify for 5310 funding, who didn't apply just because of the timeline, but that's okay. I know many of those organizations who would also benefit from this investment in infrastructure and the fact that we have a bus that could support 10 students at a time who use wheelchairs for mobility. So this would be an investment or an infrastructure investment, not just in Circle of Friends, but I think the community of youth with disabilities in general for Lane County, to include Pearl Buck, Functional Foundations. I mean, there are many organizations, the ARC, there are many organizations that I think could, and had time allowed, I would have explored collaborative partnerships and would have included that narrative in the application, but I was on a really tight timeline, so.
Yeah, go ahead, Bart.
What's the lead time for that bus from the factory? I mean, just a...
He shared 4 months, yeah, to manufacture.
It's a pretty aggressive timeline for a bus.
Yeah, so I'd probably be like, he's a salesman, so he's like 4 months, but I probably is going to be a little
Yes,
bit
more. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from the committee? Okay, go ahead, Carrie.
So just curiosity, John talked about having money for maintenance of the vehicles in the table we were just looking at. How would this vehicle be maintained?
We would take complete ownership of maintenance. You also mentioned, or there's a requirement within 5310 that there's matching funds. I would hope to establish a level of confidence with the board that, and Dave, I think you asked, you asked, I think, a really wise question around identifying funds or pots of money. In the last 4.5 months, I've secured $105,000 roughly in funding from different businesses, individuals, and grant-making organizations to support our work. And so that shows that there's a true desire and care in our community to support the kids and families that we serve, which also means that there would be, without a doubt, a dedicated body of funders, business people, businesses, and philanthropists or grant-making organizations that would aid us not only in the match requirement, but that would aid us in maintaining the vehicle over time.
Scott, has that baked?
Yeah, it took a little while, but thank you. First of all, thanks for all the work that you're doing down there.
Thank
It's
you.
amazing stuff, and we need more of it. There was one thing that you had said about partnering with fellow organizations like the ARC and possibly even family networks. I think they would be a really good partner as well. I understand, and honestly, congratulations for getting this across the finish line in such a short amount of time. So getting those MOUs all signed wouldn't be possible, but since this would be to get to and from school, I think this could be a really great investment in the disability community and community resilience outside of just formalized networks. I think we've seen that in disaster response as well, where we need resilience on both sides when it comes to transportation. So I am really excited about this. I would like to hear a little more into what future partnership might look like under this constrained application.
Yeah. And like I said, I wish there was, and I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. I certainly, I think we had, like 10 days to fill it out. So I promise I'm not using it as an excuse. It really was a short time period. Functional foundations, as an example, and I can't speak for them or to them because they're an independent 501c3, but they provide physical therapy for individuals with disabilities. We work currently, and this will expand over time, but we work currently with youth with pretty complex disabilities. Functional Foundations works with those youth with complex disabilities, but also with youth kind of on that spectrum of disabilities, so they've got a lot more clients. I can picture a collaborative partnership where when we're not using the vehicle for pickup and drop off or enrichment opportunities or behavioral health pickup and drop off, those types of things, it being available for Functional Foundations to also use for them to do mission delivery for the community. And so that's just an example of one of the ways in which I would explore partnerships with another organization. And the same would be true with Pearl Buck. Even though we are an organization that primarily serves youth, and Pearl Buck, they serve adults and then children of adults with disabilities, I know that they could potentially, and I can't speak for them, of course, but they could potentially receive benefit as well from having this infrastructure that is a 10-seater bus with tie-downs. I just know that they would find that to be a gift. And so as Circle of Friends isn't using it, they too would have the opportunity. And we would figure out a way to Carrie's point around maintenance, identifying a cost share of some kind so that it's there's some shared ownership and like making sure that it stays well maintained. But I really think that there's something really beautiful that can be created there for the community. I would also share, if I may, a lot of our school districts are going through some pretty tough financial times, and I think that by getting a bus, this could also, just in terms of collaboration and partnerships, would also support our school districts and would reduce some of the financial issues that each of them are navigating. Just as an aside.
Other questions from the committee? Dave?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Michael, again, for all the good work you're doing. This is really important stuff. I was curious, is this vehicle going to be operated with a ramp or a lift? And just thinking, like at the university, we use a vehicle with the lift, and sometimes it breaks down and things like that. And just a lot of it has to do also with operator training and things like that, and then how capable are the staff or who would operate it and drive the vehicle, things like that.
Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you. It would have a lift, and I know the more components that you have in anything, the likelihood that something's going to go wrong is higher, right? We are very fortunate, though, as an organization, to have some generous benefactors and supporters. I believe if we're fortunate to receive this support, we would, as an organization, establish a new line item in our budget that would then exist for the life of the bus, that would be intentionally and strategically designed based on the traditional life of a vehicle, right? Where in year 1, probably the cost of maintenance is going to be less than in year 10, such that we can properly, so we're being fiscally wise about it, right? So we would budget it, and then from our funders, our group of funders, make sure that that line is actually funded. That way we can ensure that we're taking care of the bus. As it relates to staffing and any issues that may come up from the inner workings of the ramp or the lift, we would hire a new employee. This would be a new individual who would drive the bus for us, and that person we would from our generous supporters, that would be funded by us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. So, Scott?
Getting used to this, sorry. Just real quickly, what happens to transportation for these students if this funding is not approved today? And what are the alternatives currently?
There are no alternatives. Again, there's no, I shared this cautiously because I don't want it to come across critically at all. So please don't take it this way. In a conversation with a member of LTD, I was told that we will not come down to Cottage Grove to get your kids. And I understand that there are limitations and that it's hard and funding is a challenge, and so that's why I'm saying I only share that to share that, to Scott, your point, there are no other options. Currently, for pickup and drop off with some of our school partners, they aid in that. But I also worry, given the state of affairs with some of our school districts, that programs like ours are at risk because of the funding need for our district partners. And all of our district partners are wonderful. I'm trying to look to the future to identify how do we continue to be a good partner for those districts, such that if transportation is an issue on the table that we could remove so that these kids continue to have access to an education, one that they so deserve, then it would be a no-brainer for them to continue coming to Circle of Friends. And then I guess the only other way would be currently for them to take the bus, the regular bus, but again, getting kids to Walmart, and it's just a little bit of a challenge. So, and we want them to use LTD. This is I'm a huge proponent of public transit, and I want this is how these kids, they're not going to be driving. They will use LTD. This is going to be their mode of transportation, so I want them on the bus. And so that's really, truly why I guess I'm here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for your time
Thank
and
you.
for presenting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So we're going to move into the committee discussion for Section 5310 funding proposals. Kathleen, do you have any orientation or guidance towards this discussion to share?
You've heard the two proposals that are in front of you. LTD has its proposal to use the full allocation of 5310 funds that John presented, and then Michael has presented Circle of Friends proposal. It's really up to the committee at this point to weigh those. You've got the coordinated plan and the PMP to use as guidance. And I just really open it up to the committee, I think, for discussion about how you want to approach the two proposals. There are two proposed motions on page 4 of your packet that sort of give you a sense of the direction we want to end up at. We want to get to the end of the meeting and make a recommendation for funding to the LTD Board of Directors, but it's really up to this committee to determine what that recommendation will be.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and open up the discussion. Does anybody have comments to share with the committee? And I do want to acknowledge, Chelsea, you're online. Please feel free to participate.
I'm here. Thank you.
Please.
So I guess the obvious question to me is, I mean, this proposal that Michael has proposed seems awesome, and it seems like a great service. But again, there's always the trade-off. So if this committee recommends that we fund the Circle of Friends proposal, what happens to the budget put together by LTD? How do we balance those numbers?
I think what we would end up doing is that LTD, for whatever portion of the 5310 allocation that LTD would have to remove from its budget, we would instead probably be looking to STIF formula. So just a heads up that that would be a little bit less STIF formula funds that are available for other things when we get to the STIF formula process in the fall.
And second part of that question then is if there's a reduction in the 5310 budget, can we still meet the coordinated plan requirements to not reduce service by using more of those formula funds to make those numbers work? Am I straight about that?
Yeah, you're asking if LTD would have to reduce service because there would be less 5310 funds available?
Yeah.
And my understanding at this point is no, we would not have to reduce service. We would instead use additional STIF formula funds to fund that service at its current level. But just to be aware that that means that when we get to the fall, there's a little bit less STIF formula funds available.
Right.
There may be other proposals that come in. There will likely be other proposals that come in the fall for STIF formula funds. So just keep all of that in mind as you're weighing this.
Other comments from the committee? Bill, it looks like you're reaching.
Yes. Not to put you on the spot, Kathleen, but does staff have a recommendation, or do you avoid making recommendations on specific projects other than the package of recommendations you put together?
Right. It's not my place and my role for this committee to make a recommendation. I believe John has made his recommendation for LTD, so.
I see. Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, this is my first one where I've been voting, so I kind of don't know how this goes. So I guess I'm just going to wing it, why not? So, LTD, we stand for people with disabilities all the time. We're always out there. We were just at that, Phyllis Opening Center. It really just strikes me how much LTD does support disabilities, but also rests their laurels on it. And if this project is not one to be funding now, particularly with 5310 money, then I don't know what would be. I don't know what else to say beyond there right now.
Bill, your light's still on. Did you have another comment or?
I do. Follow up. Maybe John already explained this, or Kathleen. Is this Circle of Friends proposal, it's not eligible for STIF funding later? Is that an option for Circle of Friends?
Circle of Friends could come back and make an application for STIF funding this fall.
So that is another option?
It is another option.
Yeah, I'll just put myself in the queue. I really appreciate what you said, Scott. I do think this is a really important project to do. I just worry that the constrained timeline of the 5310 application means that it didn't have the opportunity to build those relationships with the other nonprofit partners that I think would be necessary for it to be successful. And I think those could be built based on what we heard if there were more time to get those letters of support and come to those agreements, which would be a potential with the STIF formula funding. Go ahead.
So, sure, yes, but the STIF funding is on the ballot, and this is in front of us right now. And there's going to be so many other projects in competition with the STIF. Why would we table a project that actually made it across the finish line with 5310? And I know Circle of Friends is really well entrenched within the disability community. I have no doubt that those memorandums would be coming through really quickly. I mean, our community is very much like that. So I'm not seeing any problems here. I am seeing a problem with tabling this and hoping for future STIF money later. Thanks.
I just wanted to add, even though there is a ballot measure in May, that there will be continued STIF funding at the current level this fall for the upcoming biennium.
I saw Dave and then Bill.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's always tough to be in these situations where you have good projects competing against good projects, right? And I feel like Michael made a really compelling case with Circle of Friends here, and it sounds like whether it's them or LTD, there's still funding opportunities out there through STIF, and I would love to help support the disabled community with K through 12 education, and just seeing so many cuts happen to our education system right now. This one really hits home to me and seems really critical. I appreciate what Michael was saying with when you have 10 students who are trying to get on a bus and you don't have that many lockdown locations for wheelchair users, I think that illustrates the importance of this bus. And I would love to see us try to fund this now rather than later. Thanks.
Bill?
Yes, a follow-up question on your comment. Josh, if I understood what you said before, or maybe what John explained, even it does strike me that there's only one proposal other than LTD's proposal. And is that because of the compressed time frame? If there had been a wider time frame, can we speculate that there might have been other applications?
My guess is that the compressed timeline certainly played a role in that. ODOT sort of threw us for a loop with this 5310 timing this year. And so there was a very short, as Michael said, a 10-day period basically for people to get applications in.
So considering that, I'll just make the obvious point, and we've more or less touched on this earlier. Through the STIF process, there'd be more competition, but it would also be a chance to compare this worthy project to other worthy projects. Not to discount what's before us tonight, but again, there is another opportunity, and we could see how it would stack up against other worthy projects.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, or we could entertain a motion? Sure, go ahead.
Kathy, or because I'm kind of new here, could you explain 5310 versus STIF? I know that the 5310 money is specifically for people with disabilities and older. I don't know if the STIF has any broader population.
The STIF funds are designed at least in part to serve folks who are either older adults or folks with disabilities. STIF incorporated a former source of funding called STF, which was specifically for older adults and people with disabilities, and that got brought into the full STIF, STIF package several years ago. Yes, older adults and people with disabilities is also a focus for STIF funding.
Okay, thank you. So that is actually something I'm really worried about, and why the 5310 money is really important to me. This has been happening in a lot of spaces in disability where our voice gets watered down, and sometimes our funding gets watered down because of equity concerns or other reasons to bring voices into the room. And certainly not saying that that's not what we want, but this money is specifically for people with disabilities, and I would like us as a committee to really consider that one, because the STIF round will necessarily have projects that don't 100% benefit people with disabilities, and I don't think that's the same competition.
Well, Scott, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion with amendment. I would move to recommend LTD's fiscal year 28-29, section 5310 formula fund application as amended to include an additional subrecipient program to the LTD Board of Directors for approval. And for clarity, that is COF.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I see a second from Dave. Any discussion on the motion? Chelsea? No? Okay. Well, if there's no discussion on the motion, I will call a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, physical or...
Josh, I'm sorry, you need to do a roll call.
Oh, we need to do a roll call vote. Okay, then that's how we'll do it. So when I call your name, please let me know whether you're voting in favor or opposed or abstaining. Starting in the order I have people here. Scott?
Yes, in favor.
Okay, I hear that in favor. New microphones. Bart? Chelsea?
I am in favor.
Cassette?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So, Bill's an ex officio member of the committee representing ODOT. So.
Thank you for asking.
I wasn't counting as I was going, but that was unanimous, so I believe that passes. Okay, thank you, everybody. For those not in the room, we're having a fun rainstorm outside. Okay, so that concludes the biggest agenda item we had. Kathleen, you have staff updates for future meetings?
Yeah, just a few things. First, I wanted to thank you all. Can you hear me, Dave?
Barely.
Even with the microphone, is that better?
Not any different.
Yeah. Just yell at us.
Any better? Okay, I'm going to yell.
Good enough. Good enough. Thank you.
First, I wanted to thank you all for coming together on such short notice. It was, as I mentioned earlier, a crazy timeline, and I really appreciate you all taking the time tonight to come and take part in this process. It's really important, as we've said, so thank you. Just a heads up about our next meeting in 3 weeks on May 12th. The coordinated plan final draft is ready. I will be sending it out to all of you this week so that you have ample time to review it. If you have comments you want to get to me ahead of time, that's fine. Just email them to me. Otherwise, we'll talk about it at the meeting. That will be something that goes out this week, and then I'll get you the rest of the packet in the normal schedule about a week before the meeting. The other thing we'll be doing on May 12th is starting our STIF discretionary work, which we normally do in the fall, but we're actually going to do twice this year, thanks to another ODOT schedule. We're going to do it once for fiscal year 28, this May and June. So we'll review STIF discretionary applications, and you'll make a recommendation for funding to the LTD board, and then we'll do them again in the wintertime, so for the following biennium. So just wanted to give you all a heads up. The June meeting will be focused probably solely on STIF discretionary. And then after that, we should get a much-needed break for all of you, and we'll resume in the fall with STIF formula work.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Then I declare this meeting adjourned.